Despite being born into a world of turmoil on April 7, 1915, Billie Holiday's life was a testament to resilience and raw talent shaped by her circumstances. Her father, Clarence Holiday, a jazz guitarist who prioritized his ambitions over his family, left Billie and her teenage mother, Sadie Fagan, to fend for themselves. This abandonment introduced Billie to a life of struggle. Sadie's youth and financial hardship made it nearly impossible for her to provide stability. As a result, Billie faced a childhood filled with neglect, poverty, and the harsh realities of her environment. These early experiences left a profound imprint on her, shaping the narrative of survival that would define her later years. Her story is not just about the trials she endured, but also about how systemic forces and personal betrayals wove a web of challenges that sought to silence her voice. Navigating through the chaos, Billie found her escape in music, a medium through which she expressed the depth of her pain and the resilience of her soul as she confronted a world that seemed determined to break her spirit. Born Eleanor Fagan in 1915, Billie Holiday confronted hardship from her earliest days. Her mother, Sadie, was a teenager when Billie was born, and the absence of her father left Sadie to navigate parenthood without consistent support. Consequently, Sadie struggled to provide stability, often leaving Billie in the care of others, including Eva Miller's family, where Billie spent much of her early childhood. While sometimes nurtured by Eva's mother-in-law, Martha Miller, Billie's life was far from secure, permeated with emotional and financial challenges. Sadie's sporadic presence as a parent and provider exacerbated Billie's struggles. The limited security Billie found briefly in Eva's household was harshly shaken when, at the age of 11, a traumatic assault led to her being sent to the House of the Good Shepherd. Initially placed there for her protection, however, this Catholic reform school for African American girls was anything but a haven. Under rigid and repressive discipline, Billie endured isolation within its walls. Official records indicate her release occurred just months later, but the psychological sting of such experiences weighed heavily on Billie. Her return to Sadie did not assure a reprieve from hardship. Economic despair compelled Billie and her mother into labor-intensive jobs, working long hours to scrape by. Billie dropped out of school during her adolescence, an outcome compounded by negligence and systemic barriers in education for children like her. These layers of adversity arguably shaped Billie's artistic interpretations as much as her early exposure to music icons such as Louis Armstrong and Bessie Smith did. Despite, or perhaps because of, her painful upbringing characterized by transience, adversity, and loss, Billie developed strong resilience that manifested within her storied career years later. When Billie Holiday was just 11 years old, her life was shattered by a devastating assault committed by a neighbor, a grown man who forever imprinted trauma on her young existence. Following this harrowing event, Billie was placed in the care of the House of the Good Shepherd, a Catholic reform school ostensibly intended to protect her. Yet, instead of finding solace or healing, she encountered a harsh and unkind environment. The nuns there harbored prejudices against her, viewing her circumstances as a moral failing instead of extending compassion or understanding. Their disdain only compounded the injustices Billie endured. Her attacker, faced with legal consequences for what he had done, received a lenient sentence of only 3 months. Meanwhile, Billie, the victim, was essentially punished further by being confined to an institution. The societal failure displayed in her treatment stemmed from intersecting injustices. Those aimed at her for being a girl, for being black, and for being perceived as defiant in a world that demanded quiet submission. This dual experience of victimization and institutional neglect deepened her feelings of isolation and mistrust. These formative years laid the groundwork for Billie's lifelong struggle with authority and her reluctance to rely on those in positions of power. The betrayal she felt from the systems and institutions meant to protect her manifested itself in an enduring skepticism towards authority figures. In the years to come, as Billie faced other challenges and societal barriers, this early trauma would resonate, threading through her music and the emotional intensity of her performances, even as she sought to transcend the constraints and scars of her past. Through the smoky and dimly lit nightclubs of New York, Billie Holiday's soulful voice etched itself into the hearts of many, defying the oppressive barriers of her era. Her journey into music was as much an escape as it was a confrontation, for in song, she found sanctuary, yet in the industry, she met systemic discrimination. Born into a world stricken with hardship, Billie entered the performing arts at a time when racial prejudice intertwined with every aspect of American society. Her unique sound resonated with audiences, drawing acclaim and a following that allowed her to become a staple in venues bustling with energy and life. However, this rise to prominence came at a steep personal price. Club owners and managers often reduced her to a commodity, exploiting her talents while denying her the recognition reserved for her white contemporaries. Even in the acclaimed performance spaces that lauded her brilliance, she faced entrenched racism, often relegated to side entrances, and reminded of the inequality that permeated her world. The widespread enforcement of Jim Crow laws compounded her struggles, barring her from opportunities for which her talent so deservedly qualified her. Billie, however, continued to pour herself into her music, refusing to let the weight of these injustices extinguish her passion. Her performances of enduring anthems such as Strange Fruit, a powerful protest song against lynching and racial violence, revealed her bravery and willingness to use her platform to confront deep societal wounds. This act of defiance immortalized her not merely as a singer, but as a symbol of the burgeoning struggle for civil rights. With haunting lyrics and a voice carrying the weight of sorrow and defiance, Billie gave a face to the struggles endured by countless African Americans, illuminating the harsh realities that many preferred to ignore. Despite the accolades and a staggering talent that carried her to legendary status, her life was marked by profound personal struggles that mirrored the societal challenges she sang against. From exploited relationships to targeted government scrutiny of her activism and her substance dependencies, her path was anything but easy. Her resilience, however, resonated in her recordings and live performances, ensuring her contributions to music and social justice echoed far beyond her lifetime. While Billie Holiday's career ascended with sublime performances across jazz stages, it reached a profound turning point when she encountered Strange Fruit, a stark and haunting song written by Abel Meeropol. Meeropol, a schoolteacher, composed the piece to denounce the harrowing atrocities of lynching, a heinous act that claimed countless Black American lives in the earlier half of the 20th century. At first hesitant to embrace such a politically charged song, Holiday decided to make it her own. This decision was deeply personal. As a Black woman who had endured countless experiences of discrimination, the song's lyrics resonated with her soul. Its text, evocative and painful, transformed metaphor into reality, comparing lynched bodies to fruit hanging from southern trees. Holiday debuted Strange Fruit at Cafe Society, marking a historic moment in her artistic journey. The nightclub in New York City was the first integrated venue of its kind, embodying a spirit of resistance against social norms of racial segregation. Under the dim stage lights, she would close her sets with this piece. A single spotlight would capture her poised presence, and no encores followed it. The mood was somber, deliberate. As Holiday unfolded the song's story through her raw emotion and peculiar phrasing, audiences sat transfixed. Many were moved to tears, others had no words at all. This performance was not mere entertainment. It was a protest, an act of defiance against a brutally unequal system. Strange Fruit buried itself into America's collective conscience, fueling dialogues that many had avoided. It became one of the earliest civil rights anthems, carried not on banners but in the harrowing verses sung by Holiday. Its impact extended beyond its lyrical confrontation of injustices. It turned Billie Holiday into a symbol of resilience and resistance. Her ability to breathe life into Meeropol's words elevated her from an extraordinary vocalist to an unparalleled icon in the fight against racial trauma and violence. This bold cultural intersection angered many, including the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, which harassed her for years, further illuminating the systemic issues embedded in America's law enforcement. Through Strange Fruit, Holiday did not only articulate the pain of her community, but also forced a predominantly indifferent society to confront its deeply rooted racism. Her artistry became activism, and this transformation defined her legacy in unprecedented ways. Even decades later, listening to her rendition is an emotional reckoning, a stark reminder that art can be among the most potent forms of political dissent, and a mirror to societal scars. Despite her extraordinary talent, Billie Holiday's time with Artie Shaw's band presented both triumph and adversity. Joining Shaw in 1938, she broke barriers as one of the first Black women to perform with an all-white orchestra, a trailblazing move that underscored her brilliance as a vocalist and symbolized the growing demand for racial integration in music. Yet, this remarkable achievement was marred by the discrimination and hostility she endured. Especially in the deeply segregated South, the challenges were both relentless and humiliating. Holiday was often barred from entering venues through the main doors, forced to use freight entrances instead of passenger elevators, and denied access to the same restrooms and accommodations as her white bandmates. Even her immense popularity and undeniable artistic status could not shield her from these indignities. Despite Shaw's attempts to shield and support her, the societal pressures of the era weighed heavily. Establishments refused to book the band altogether due to Holiday's presence, while audiences sometimes reacted with outright animosity. These overt displays of racism not only isolated her amongst her own peers, but also forced her to navigate a world that was rarely willing to see past the color of her skin. Artie Shaw, albeit supportive, could do little to fully combat the entrenched prejudices the band encountered during their tours. For Holiday, these constant affronts to her dignity were not without profound personal costs. The stress and emotional toll began to manifest, and while her artistry thrived, her voice delivering soulful and poignant performances, the personal battles were inescapable. It was during her stint with Shaw that she solidified her position as a transformative figure in jazz and popular music. Though this came at great cost to her sense of belonging and mental well-being, Holiday ultimately left the band, but the experience was emblematic of her broader struggles in an era that was unwilling to wholly embrace her. While she had succeeded in charting new territory for black artists, the pervasive racism of the industry and society at large remained an ever-present burden, a shadow that loomed over even her brightest accomplishments. Her resilience in the face of such systemic discrimination remains a testament to her strength and unyielding devotion to her craft, as she soldiered on to influence and inspire generations after her time with Shaw's band ended. Her defiance against the bitter tides of injustice showcased her unyielding spirit as she stood against the discrimination she endured during her time with Artie Shaw's band. Billie Holiday was one of the first black women to tour with an all-white orchestra, a feat groundbreaking yet fraught with challenges. Her resolve sparked from years of enduring a society still crippled by racism and her own experiences facing systemic inequities. Touring the South with Shaw's band, she encountered relentless prejudice. Hotels and restaurants often refused her entry, and venues designated separate areas for her presence. The strain of performing simultaneously in spaces unsupportive of her identity only deepened her resolve. Billie's tenure in Shaw's orchestra was a duality of musical excellence and racial tension. Her contributions amplified the band's success, yet such triumphs were shadowed by exploitation and demeaning treatment. The frustrations of navigating their circuit as both an artist and a woman of color community eventually compelled her departure. She refused to allow external pressures and discrimination to dictate her worth or overwhelm her craft. Daring to exit Shaw's ensemble reflected a bold statement of independence that risked her career but salvaged her dignity. Where others might have yielded, Billie pushed forward. Her choices were not just a personal protest, but a beacon of resistance, marked in a time when speaking out could lead to financial ruin or widespread backlash. Leaving Shaw's circle reshaped her path. It underscored an artist courageous enough to walk away rather than compromise her principles. This separation evidence set her narrative unique, branching toward steadfast courage. Such defiance extended into her music, with passion threading through every note, accompanied Forthright's iconic pieces. Tracks lamented resilience, implying music demonstrating underlying inferno tales. Crafted phrases hillmarks echoed tenets, crafted though impact trade-offs. Lit replies established broader consuming footstep legacy thread. In 1945, a pivotal moment unfolded in Billie Holiday's life, epitomizing a cycle of rejection and exploitation that had coursed through her most intimate relationships. Billie approached her mother, Sadie, for financial assistance, believing in the security of familial support, especially since she had previously helped Sadie establish her restaurant, Mom Holidays, with significant financial contributions. However, when Billie found herself in dire need and reached out to her mother, her request was met with a harsh refusal. This denial not only shocked her, but also ignited an intense argument between mother and daughter. In her frustration and grief, Billie uttered the now immortal words, "God bless the child that's got his own." This poignant declaration underscored the rawness of her sense of abandonment, transforming her pain into art. Inspired by this bitter exchange, those very words became the foundation for one of Billie Holiday's most famous songs, "God Bless the Child." Co-written with Arthur Herzog Jr., the song reflects a universal truth about self-reliance and the often painful realities of human relationships. Yet, it also became deeply personal, an anthem of her own struggles with betrayal by those she trusted most. Its soulful lyrics and melancholic melody echoed Billie's life experiences, weaving together themes of independence and resilience while underscoring the scars left behind by betrayal. Sadie's refusal was not just a familial rift. It symbolized a broader pattern in Billie's life, as she often relied on those she loved, only to find exploitation and abandonment where there should have been safety and support. Despite her rising fame and celebrated artistry, she seemed entangled in relationships that mirrored this profound lack of reciprocity. This recurring cycle of trust and betrayal left emotional wounds that no achievement or recognition could entirely heal. God Bless the Child transcended its origin as a personal lament. While its creation sprang from a moment of heartbreak, the song resonated with audiences far beyond Billie's immediate world. It became a timeless work, addressing themes of economic inequality and individual strength, finding relevance across generations. The song's evolution from a deeply painful personal experience into a universal anthem stands as a testimony to Billie Holiday's unparalleled ability to transform her suffering into enduring art. Still, the argument with her mother and the creation of this iconic song left an indelible mark on Billie's psyche. This incident crystallized feelings of isolation that would shadow her throughout her career and personal life. Even amidst adoration from fans and acknowledgement from critics, the scars of betrayal by those closest to her left a void that seemed impossible to fill. Despite her staggering talent, Billie Holiday's personal life was entangled with profound challenges. Born Eleanor Fagan in 1915, she climbed to fame as one of the most emotionally arresting jazz vocalists of her time. But this success stood in stark contrast to her embattled private existence. Early in her adult life, her relationship with James Monroe, her first husband, introduced her to a world of substance abuse. Monroe, who was also known to abuse substances, became a catalyst for Billie's initial exposure to drugs, setting the groundwork for an addiction that would plague her for the rest of her life. This toxic influence marked the beginning of a series of damaging relationships. Partners and men in her life repeatedly exploited her vulnerabilities, using her dependency as a means of control. Their mistreatment, coupled with the immense pressures of fame, exacerbated Holiday's addiction. Her growing dependency on heroin and alcohol served as an escape from the emotional pain that she had to contend with regularly. This pain was rooted not only in the exploitative dynamics of her relationships, but also in the systemic racism and personal hardships she encountered as a Black woman navigating an industry dominated by prejudice. Her addiction became a vicious cycle, harming her health and reputation. Her struggles played out publicly, tarnishing her career and alienating some of her audiences. Arrests for drug possession were used by government authorities to further control and oppress her. These legal troubles not only disrupted her life, but also marred the legacy she was trying to create in the world of jazz. The stigma of these arrests was wielded against her as a tool for marginalization. Despite her talent and undeniable contributions to music, she was often judged not by her voice, but by a personal life that many were eager to demonize. As the years passed, the consequences of her substance use became more apparent. Her body bore the brunt of years of abuse, and her voice, her most powerful instrument, known for its haunting depth, began to falter. An eventual diagnosis of cirrhosis of the liver added physical decline to her emotional and psychological burdens. Even in this deteriorated state, she remained under the watchful and judgmental eye of the authorities, who targeted her as part of their broader campaign against drugs. Her refusal to conform, her defiance in continuing to perform songs that highlighted social injustices, such as the hauntingly powerful Strange Fruit, made her a target for those who sought to silence her. In the end, Billie's personal life and battles with addiction symbolized broader societal struggles. Her life was a mix of painful heartbreak and defiant resilience, culminating in a tragic narrative wherein her personal struggles provided raw material for her evocative music. Despite initial appearances as a figure of support, Louis McKay revealed a devastating betrayal that profoundly altered Billie Holiday's life. When he entered Billie's world, McKay was perceived as a stable presence during her tumultuous years, seemingly offering to help her confront her struggles with addiction. For a time, Billie perhaps saw in him a glimmer of hope, someone who might stand by her side through her darkest hours. However, this hope was shattered when McKay's collusion with Harry Anslinger, head of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, came to light. Anslinger spearheaded an aggressive, racially charged crusade aiming to vilify and criminalize artists like Billie, specifically targeting her due to her heroin use and activism. What made McKay's betrayal particularly crippling was the calculated manner in which he aligned with those wishing to bring Billie down, including federal agents keen on asserting power over her life. This collusion painted McKay not as a partner or protector, but as an opportunist willing to exploit Billie's vulnerabilities for personal or legal advantage. In their campaign, McKay and Anslinger orchestrated plans that subjected Billie to relentless harassment and humiliation, deepening her descent into despair. McKay's actions fed into Billie's isolation, leaving her disillusioned and stripped of allies in an already hostile environment. Already burdened by the weight of systemic racism, misogyny, and public judgment, Billie faced the realization that even the people standing closest to her could become agents of her destruction. McKay's manipulation worsened her emotional and physical fragility, epitomizing the broader societal victimization she suffered throughout her career. This betrayal accentuated Billie's loneliness and existential struggles, marking a bitter chapter in a life already fraught with turmoil and resilience. From the moment Harry Anslinger assumed his role as the first commissioner of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics in 1930, he wielded his authority with an agenda steeped in racial prejudice. Among his many targets, Billie Holiday became a central figure of his campaign, her fame and defiance, placing her squarely in Anslinger's crosshairs. Billie's performance of Strange Fruit, a haunting ballad exposing the horrors of lynching, marked her not just as a trailblazing artist, but as an outspoken critic of racial inequality. This, for Anslinger, was unacceptable. His disdain for jazz music, a genre he derided as chaotic and inherently tied to black culture, intersected with his broader ideology that vilified both the music and its creators. Billie's growing popularity only amplified his animosity, leading him to exploit her history of substance abuse as a means to silence her. She was repeatedly arrested under trumped-up drug charges, with Anslinger's agents trailing her every step. At one point, following her first conviction, she was sentenced to a year-long rehab program, a punitive measure masquerading as treatment. Anslinger's vendetta extended beyond mere arrests. Through a bureaucratic maneuver, he ensured that Billie's cabaret license was revoked, effectively barring her from performing in most clubs. A devastating blow for an artist whose livelihood depended on live performances. Despite her attempts to regain this critical license, she was denied at every turn. Her pleas met with institutional resistance forged by Anslinger's influence. When Billie sought medical treatment during the final years of her life, Anslinger demonstrated the vindictive lengths to which he would go. He instructed his agents to handcuff her to her hospital bed, accusing her of continuing to possess narcotics, even as she lay dying of liver and heart disease in 1959. The relentless pursuit of Billie Holiday underscored the systemic racism prevalent within American institutions. Anslinger's campaign against her was not solely about enforcing drug laws, but about suppressing a voice that dared to expose racial injustice. By targeting her, he revealed a broader strategy aimed at silencing black artists who used their platforms to challenge the injustices of their time. Billie's resistance to his persecution and refusal to remain silent became emblematic of the growing struggle for civil rights. Her story a stark reminder of the costs borne by those who dared to confront prejudice. Billie Holiday's experience reflected the deep racial injustices of her time, particularly under the harsh watch of Harry Anslinger, the head of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics. Anslinger directed his war on drugs disproportionately against people of color, and Holiday became one of his primary targets, while white celebrities like Judy Garland, who also struggled with substance abuse, were met with sympathy and avenues for recovery. Billie encountered hostility and punishment. Despite her fame as a jazz legend, she was relentlessly pursued, arrested, and eventually denied the medical care she needed when she lay dying of liver and heart disease. Anslinger's racial biases were stark. While he intervened gently in Garland's drug issues, advising her to take vacations for recovery, he had Holiday arrested in her hospital bed and ensured she remained under police surveillance, even as her health rapidly declined. Holiday's defiance further fueled Anslinger's obsession with silencing her. Her performances of Strange Fruit, a haunting song about lynching in the South, stood as a powerful indictment of the very system that oppressed black Americans. For Anslinger, this was more than a drug problem. It was a challenge to an ingrained racial order, and silencing Holiday became a personal crusade. She had risen from a traumatic upbringing marked by poverty, exploitation, and abuse to captivate audiences with her emotive voice and presence. But her struggles offstage were amplified by a society that punished her both for her race and her defiance of societal norms. Her public struggles with addiction were used to vilify her, overshadowing her contributions to art and civil rights. Anslinger's selective leniency demonstrated how black women, even those with international acclaim, could be vilified for actions or behaviors that white women were compassionately guided through. Yet, through it all, Holiday refused to let injustice silence her artistry. She continued to sing her truth, transforming her pain and experiences into music that resonated deeply with those who understood the harsh realities she lived daily. Her resilience made her a symbol of defiance and creativity in the face of systemic oppression at a time when the odds were stacked entirely against her. During Billie Holiday's stirring performances of Strange Fruit, an unrelenting silence often filled the room. The poignant song, widely regarded as one of the first civil rights anthems, became a beacon of Holiday's fearless resilience against racial oppression. Written by Abel Meeropol and introduced to Holiday in 1939, it conveys the horrific imagery of lynched black bodies in the American South. Metaphorically described as strange fruit, despite its grim subject matter, Holiday imbued the piece with mesmerizing emotion and artistry, ensuring the stark message reached hearts of her listeners. She debuted the song at Cafe Society, New York's first racially integrated nightclub, where it instantly impacted audiences with its blend of pain, anger, and resilience. The haunting nature of Strange Fruit was amplified by Holiday's vocal delivery, its delicate phrasing steeped in both vulnerability and defiance. In stark contrast to jazz's customary escapism, this was a raw, unflinching gaze into America's darkest acts of racial cruelty. Though it garnered critical acclaim, it also painted a target on Holiday's back in a society where overt calls for racial justice prompted backlash. Authorities often monitored her, and venues resisted allowing her to sing it, fearing retaliation from racists. Nevertheless, Holiday continued to champion the song, frequently closing her sets with it, her quiet bravery striking a chord in every performance. The words were accompanied by a request: waitstaff stopping service, lights dimming to a single spotlight on her face, turning each performance into a solemn act of remembrance. Her commitment to the song not only underscored her artistic depth, but also revealed her profound social consciousness. It was more than a melody, it was an act of protest and a dedication to the memories of lynching victims. By turning her art into activism, Holiday elevated the cultural conversation on race, providing a precursor to the civil rights movement that would gain momentum over the next decades. Despite the personal and professional risks, Holiday's refusal to silence the message of Strange Fruit showcased her unyielding resolve to confront injustice, even when it cost her support from some promoters and venues. Critics hailed her performance as an unparalleled merging of voice and message, a defiant act of courage in an era swelled with prejudice. As years passed, Strange Fruit did not fade into history. Instead, its resonance grew. It remains a chilling testimony to America's history and a hallmark of Holiday's enduring legacy. Though she faced immense adversity, the song transcended her struggles, embedding itself as a lasting weapon against silence and complicity in the face of systemic hatred. The courage with which Holiday performed it inspired generations of musicians and activists alike. Embedded in this one haunting melody was a call to action, a plea for humanity, and an enduring reminder of one singer's bravery in confronting unspeakable truth. In 1956, Billie Holiday's memoir, Lady Sings the Blues, was published, drawing widespread attention and controversy. Co-written with William Dufty, the book was an unflinching and raw recounting of her tumultuous life, including her struggles with addiction, poverty, and exploitation, as well as details about her relationships and experiences in the entertainment industry. Unlike sanitized celebrity autobiographies of the time, Billie's candid accounts painted a vivid portrait of her hardships and personal battles. The memoir quickly became a lightning rod for heated public debates and backlash. Holiday's openness in discussing deeply personal topics, such as her encounters with racial prejudice and abusive relationships, shocked many readers and angered powerful figures. Some in Hollywood and the music industry felt that her revelations threatened their reputations, prompting legal threats and a campaign to discredit her. The backlash was fueled by her unfiltered portrayal of injustices she faced, as well as the systemic obstacles she endured throughout her life and career. Industry elites sought to tarnish her credibility, attempting to silence her voice just as she had amplified her truth. However, despite the scandals and efforts to undermine her, Lady Sings the Blues resonated deeply with fans and critics alike. Many admired Holiday's bravery in laying bare her vulnerabilities, and the memoir garnered her an entirely new audience who appreciated her artistry in a new light. It highlighted her resilience and the emotional depth of her music, which often mirrored the challenges described in the book. The memoir has since been regarded as a seminal work, not only for its autobiographical insights, but also for its cultural significance, reflecting on the intersection of art, race, and personal suffering in mid-20th century America. The publication of the memoir also coincided with a comeback moment for Holiday, as her music gained fresh appreciation. Although she faced declining health, Billie continued performing, often channeling the raw emotions articulated in her memoir into her live shows. The book solidified her legacy as not just a music icon, but also a poignant chronicler of the human. Billie Holiday's final days encapsulate the profound tragedy that defined much of her life. As her health disintegrated, a consequence of years of battling addiction, she remained trapped in a life marked by profound exploitation and suffering. She continued to perform for audiences yearning to hear her distinctive, soul-stirring voice, but her financial security was undermined by those who sought to benefit from her vulnerable state. Her fame contrasted bitterly with the poverty she endured, revealing an industry willing to profit from her artistry while remaining indifferent to her descent into despair. In her last performances, even as her voice faltered under the strain of exhaustion and illness, she left a mark that would resonate far beyond her lifetime. Publicly celebrated but privately abandoned, Holiday faced repeated betrayals, even by those she trusted most. Friends, agents, and colleagues exploited her, draining her earnings and bridging no pathway for recovery or solace. Struggling with heroin addiction, she often found herself under the shadow of the law, a cycle worsened by a punitive justice system that targeted her rather than offering support. Her later moments were spent in isolation, not just from society, but from those who could have offered her true compassion. She was hospitalized in her final weeks, suffering from liver and heart complications. In a grim twist, Holiday spent her last days under police surveillance, as she was arrested for drug possession even while lying gravely ill in her hospital bed. Despite the magnitude of her contributions to music and culture, she died in poverty, leaving behind only a modest amount of money. A bitter testament to the many who profited from her, but gave little in return. Holiday's passing on July 17, 1959, at the age of 44, marked an end fraught with sorrow and injustice, reflecting a lifetime of systemic neglect and personal betrayals. In the decades following her passing, Billie Holiday emerged as an enduring symbol of talent, resilience, and the cost of confronting societal injustices. She achieved recognition posthumously that far surpassed what she received during her challenging lifetime. Inductions into prestigious halls of fame cemented her status as an icon in American music. These honors included the Grammy Hall of Fame, where timeless recordings such as Strange Fruit found their rightful place, and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, where she was celebrated not only for her jazz artistry, but also for her influence beyond genre. Her accolades also extended to the National Rhythm and Blues Hall of Fame, reflecting the vast reach of her work across musical landscapes. In her hometown of Baltimore, a poignant tribute emerged in the mid-1980s, a statue commemorating her life and contributions, enriched by panels that depicted themes from her haunting song Strange Fruit. The statue stands as a reminder of the struggles she endured, particularly the racial injustices she decried through her music. Across cities and generations, her image has become a symbol of artistic courage and the enduring spirit to confront adversity. Critics and fans have since re-evaluated her extensive body of work, underscoring not just the innovation in her vocal techniques, but also the incredible emotional depth that came from her own life struggles. Her recordings have become hallowed exhibits in the history of jazz and blues, with Grammy Awards being posthumously issued to celebrate her contributions. A remarkable milestone came in later years, when she was granted a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award, an indication of the enduring impact her music continues to have on global audiences. Beyond music, her bravery in performing tracks like Strange Fruit placed her at the forefront of the civil rights movement, quietly but powerfully challenging racial discrimination in an era when such acts carried immense personal risk. As society better understood the weight of her message, she became not just a jazz icon, but also a figure of moral courage whose legacy supports ongoing conversations about racial equity. Billie's struggles with addiction and systemic injustices during her life were in stark contrast to the reverence lavished upon her memory. Each reevaluation of her career added layers of respect to her name, affording her the admiration often denied her in life. Artists spanning genres attribute their musical and personal philosophies to her influence, ensuring that her legacy is vibrant and continually relevant. The government's targeting of Billie Holiday represents a chilling chapter in American history, underscoring the intersections of systemic racism, censorship, and personal struggles. Holiday's iconic song, Strange Fruit, which vividly depicted lynching and institutionalized violence against African Americans, became a lightning rod for controversy and resistance. Its raw, unapologetic depiction of racial injustice troubled many, including federal authorities who feared its potential to galvanize the civil rights movement. As a result, Billie became a target of Harry Anslinger's Federal Bureau of Narcotics, under the guise of her struggles with addiction. Facing harassment, arrests, and continuous scrutiny, Billie's life spiraled into a public battle with the law. Anslinger's motivations were deeply rooted in racial prejudices, as he believed jazz and its artists represented a moral corruption tied to drug use and cultural rebellion. Despite her attempts to confront these challenges, Billie was relentlessly pursued, with federal agents even planting informants in her circle. During her final years, her health declined from the cumulative toll of systemic oppression, personal hardships, and addiction. Even as she lay dying in a hospital, police kept her under surveillance, a stark reminder of the dehumanization she suffered. Her untimely death highlighted the damaging effects of systemic racism, punitive drug policies, and society's failure to support those battling personal demons. Billie Holiday's life and legacy serve as a powerful reminder of the resilience of the human spirit in the face of oppressive systems, leaving behind not only music that resonated with generations, but a clarion call for justice.